Okay, so gotta get in the right mindset to talk about this. I'm 3 weeks postpartum, and I feel like I'm just now ready to kind of talk about how this crazy birth happened when I had my baby in the lobby of the hospital. So it was the morning of December 4th, and the days leading up to that, I had had a lot of Braxton Hicks contractions, but I had really had those my whole pregnancy, which is where your stomach and uterus just kind of hardens up and they're like practice contractions. But since I also had preterm labor with Elara at 30 weeks, I kind of had contractions like all day, every day. And, you know, at my last doctor's appointment, I was 3 centimeters starting at 30 weeks because of the preterm labor, and I kept getting more dilated and more effaced as all my appointments went. So at my 36-week appointment, I was already 4 centimeters dilated and completely effaced. So my doctor had warned me that she did not think I was going to make it much longer. But I kind of blew it off, as I always do, because I was for certain that this time, with all of the shots I was taking every week because of my previous preterm birth with Elio and all the precautions I was taking this time around, because of that, I was going to be like at least 40 weeks. I thought maybe even 41 weeks with this baby, but boy, was I wrong. So it was the morning of December 4th, and I was having, same thing, kind of Braxton Hicks contractions. And they weren't painful, but they were starting to get a little bit consistent. But again, because I had had all this preterm labor, this was not uncommon for me. So it was really hard for me to know, like, was it the real thing or was it not? And it wasn't painful. And the same thing kind of happened with Elio, is that the pain didn't start with him until my water broke, which was kind of how this story is going to go as well. So that morning, you know, I had mentioned to Matthias I was having contractions. I think he had maybe even texted his dad, who was supposed to watch Elio, and been like, hey, you know, Brogan's feeling a certain way. So like, it was kind of on the radar, but at the same time, I was dismissing it because I wasn't in enough pain for myself to know, like, yeah, this is the real deal. So lunchtime came around, and I was busy that day. Matthias was busy that day, and I hadn't eaten all day. So at about 3 o'clock, I decided, or maybe 3:30, that I was hungry and I wanted a Popeye's chicken sandwich. So I sent Matthias, and he actually took Elio with him just to give me some time to kind of relax by myself. And that was at probably about, I don't know, 3:45, he left the house to go drive up the street. And almost instantly after he left, I was cleaning something in the house. I don't remember, nothing like strenuous or anything, but I felt a pop in my uterus, a very specific popping sensation that I also felt when my water broke with Elio. But with him, when I felt the pop, the water gushed out at the same time. With this, I felt the pop, and it was a few minutes later, like a few full minutes later, that the gush started coming. And when I felt that pop, I literally thought in my head, oh gosh, that feeling was awfully familiar to when my water broke with Elio. But since there wasn't the gush of water immediately, I was like, whoa, maybe that's not what it is. So I felt the pop, and then a few minutes, the gushing started happening, and that's when I knew, oh shit, the contractions I was having this morning were not fake. They were very much real. I think I just have a really high pain tolerance. I don't know, because it's not very painful for me until like I get to the point of needing to push. So I immediately called Matthias, who was in the Popeyes drive-thru, and he had already ordered our food but not paid yet, and he just had to dip out of the line and come home. I was like, babe, you need to come home right away. My water just broke. I'm not joking. I'm like, for real, I'm not joking, because I played a water breaking prank on him with Elio. So this time around, he thought I was gonna do that again, and had mentioned to me several times, please do not do that again. So I had to reassure him, like, this is the real deal. So he came immediately home, but it took him probably 10 minutes to get home. And at that point, I had picked up the camera and started kind of like filming some stuff. So while he was racing home with Elio, I was just kind of in like a panic mode. I definitely started feeling panicky, and I was just kind of like, oh my God, what do we need? So I had my hospital bag already packed, which was great. Baby girl stuff already packed, which was great. The first thing I did after my water broke, after I called Matthias, was put on a diaper, because that's what I did with Elio. It's not all one gush. It kind of like gushes over a period of time, and then you'll start bleeding and stuff too when the baby's coming. And I knew that with him because I put the diaper on when my water broke with him too. So again, I put my adult diaper on so I could, whatever happens, I was cool. And then like a big pair of sweatpants and I started packing Matthias's stuff up because he hadn't packed a hospital bag. We had some stuff kind of set out for him, but I don't know why. My instincts just told me like, I gotta pack stuff for him. So I was doing that, getting the camera stuff to ready. He got home. Elio was already in the car because he went to go get the food with Matthias. So Matthias just ran in real quick. I ran out to the car with Elio and I was like, you're gonna be a big brother, like sister's coming. I felt at that point very cool, calm, and collected because we were in the car, like it was happening. I was definitely having contractions pick up at that point and they started to get a little bit more painful, but I genuinely thought that at that moment we were gonna be going to the hospital, checking in, you know, getting in a room, and then like in a couple hours she would come. Like, even though I had a very fast birth with Elio too, I at least made it to the bed with him before I started pushing, but his was honestly almost equally as fast. With her, I didn't make it to the bed, but I never did I think that it was gonna go as fast as it did. So anyways, so my water broke at 4, almost on the dot, 3:59. And we live about 15 to 17 minutes from the hospital. And also on the way to the hospital, we had to drop Elio off at Matthias's dad's house. Now, he did live on the way to the hospital, which was a blessing, but Matthias still had to make the time home from the restaurant too. So all in all, it happened very quick because I ended up having her 35 minutes after my water broke, just to give you guys a visual of how much little time we had to hit one more red light. We got Elio dropped off to his dad's house, and that's when like it really started picking up. And then from his dad's house, we had probably like another 10-minute drive. I was still having contractions, and when we were at like the couple red lights right before the hospital, it like really started picking up. And at that point I was, you know, making those sounds and just like letting my body take over. And still at that point, I didn't know she was going, like basically coming at that point. So the hospital we were at has like a roundabout where you pull up and you're not supposed to park there, but I don't know why we didn't go to the emergency room. Actually, I do know. Again, it's because I didn't know she was gonna come that fast. Even when we pulled up to the hospital and I was having back-to-back like contractions, for some reason my mind wasn't like, oh, she's coming now. It was just like, I gotta get into a room, like she's coming soon, basically. So we pulled up to the roundabout and Matthias was like, should I just drop you off? And I was like, no, just park the car. Like basically in my mind, I was like, they can tow us, I don't care, we just need to get in the hospital. Like we need to figure it out. I don't want you to park and me have to walk myself and all that. So this woman who was exiting the hospital, obviously she was just getting off her work shift, not on shift anymore, but she heard me, so she brought me kind of like a wheelchair and I just sat down in it, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I can't sit. Like I remember it feeling so much pressure like in my ass that I felt like I could not sit down. So I was like holding the sides of the wheelchair, like lifting my ass off of the bottom of the chair as she was wheeling me. And she wheeled us in through like the main lobby, and you're supposed to go to admissions, give them your insurance, get all checked in, then somebody walks you to like the right thing in the hospital. So Matthias attempted to do that, and very quickly he was like, not happening. We immediately started walking to labor and delivery because I was in so much pain, and I just basically was like, she's coming now. So that's when you see this woman who was not on shift just running us through the hospital, because labor and delivery was not close to the main entrance. And it legitimately felt like a freaking movie. I mean, they were sprinting down the hall. There's a point in the footage where you hear her say, are we gonna do it? Are we gonna run? And Matthias is like, yeah, let's do it. And they just haul ass. And I was like literally holding myself off the chair, trying to get through my contractions. And I felt her coming in those moments. So the woman pushing me was not a nurse, because she did not know what to do. So we had to run down this hall, get in an elevator, go up the elevator, and then we're finally at like the lobby of labor and delivery. And that is when it got really freaking real. So I was just trying to get through my contractions, and I felt her head coming. I'm like, she's coming right now. I still had my pants and my diaper on. I started to rip those off. I think Matthias got the idea that like I was not fucking around. This baby was coming, whether we liked it or not. And he ripped my pants off. He said that his thought was like, if he needed to catch the baby, he didn't have sterile hands or gloves, so he was gonna use like the diaper to try and catch the baby. But anyways, and then the woman who was pushing us, who we finally did figure out who she was, but she was a big mystery for the longest time, picks up the phone because all the labor and delivery doors were locked and the lobby was like shut down. That's why you had to check in the front because of all the different like COVID regulations. It was very like, there was a certain way you had to do things. So no one was in like that lobby that could help us, that labor and delivery lobby. And so she picked up the phone to try and get them to unlock the doors to the labor and delivery room. And then all of a sudden, like, another nurse heard me like screaming and started like to come and try and help, but she was also not like a labor and delivery nurse. She was like something random. She finally got the doors open, and right after Matthias started taking my pants off, that is when her head was delivered. And I was in the wheelchair with just her head hanging out of me and running through the hospital doors. I'm holding her head. Matthias is, trying to hold her head up. We partially deliver the baby. Half the body's now coming out. I finally, in those last 5 seconds before the rest of her body came out, they turned me into a labor and delivery room. And at that point, my body just released and like the rest of her body came out. Like, I don't even remember the feeling of pushing. That's how much she just like, she obviously didn't slip out. I obviously pushed, but I don't remember pushing because it was just the urge was like she was coming. And the nurse's hands, she doesn't have gloves. You can still see the diaper in the frame of them finally pulling her onto my chest, but she was literally hanging off the wheelchair out of me, like me holding her and Matthias holding her for, it seemed like a while, but yeah, it's just insane how fast she came. And then I got to put her on my chest, which was just amazing. I didn't get that experience with Elio because he was such a preemie that they whisked him away. She was at least, breathing on her own. And, she looked really, really small to me. When I pulled her out, she definitely felt small, looked small. I was like, the first thing I said was like, is she okay? Because I know that was a really freaking fast birth. And I don't know, just after having Elio in the NICU, I just wanted to make sure that she was okay. People say all the time, like, you're so lucky you have such fast labors, and like definitely is probably better than like a 40-hour labor, but it's definitely also pretty traumatic and scary for sure. But she's healthy, she's totally fine, but it definitely still trips me up to think about. And like I said, to go back to that place and like what I was really feeling in those moments, it's just like, I was definitely scared, but I don't know how I do it really. Anyways, so after I had her in the wheelchair, I stood up with the cord still attached and I got myself into the bed. I felt pretty good. I think that's the thing about when you have like completely natural births, you're free to move your body and all of that. And I felt pretty strong afterwards. So it was time to be stitched, and I didn't tear too bad, but I was stitched with Elio. I had like a 1.5 degree tear this time, which is about the same I had with Elio. She said I most likely just re-tore in the same spot. And they were like, it's small enough that you don't need to be stitched, but the one nurse was like, if it was my vagina, I would want to be stitched. Now that like was like, oh, okay, well, that's what she says. I don't know why that like registered with me, but I was like, okay, let's do it. And first they tried to stitch me up with like no numbing stuff, no anything, because I obviously just had a natural birth. I also delivered the placenta before they stitched me up. I totally forgot that. So they numbed me first, it still hurt so bad, and then they gave me laughing gas and it still hurt so bad, like because you're so sensitive after you deliver, I could not bear like the needle going through the stitch. And then they ended up giving me something through my IV, which ended up taking the edge off, and they were able to stitch me up all good and dandy. And then they weighed her. We were in that labor room for not very long. I think like an hour later, they were just waiting for actually just our COVID test to come back to say we were negative to move us to the recovery. And then we moved to the recovery room, and I got to spend some time with her, learn how to, try and breastfeed her, which our breastfeeding journey has been another hell of a story. Maybe I'll get into that one another time. But she ended up just being really healthy. She had a little bit of jaundice, but really healthy, happy little girl. Super tiny. By the time we left the hospital, she had dropped to 4 pounds, 14 ounces. She was just this little tiny peanut. We don't know why she came out so small. My placenta tested fine. She was hitting her growth marks at all her appointments. Like my belly was measuring fine, all that. So over the next, we were at the hospital, I think for about 36 hours. The only thing keeping her there was her jaundice level was a little elevated. So again, they were waiting for a test to come back before we could go home. But we ended up going home, and she is such a good baby. She was good in the car. She's still good in the car, not that we're really going many places. And then we brought her home to meet Big Brother. And Elio, he just turned 2, so he didn't really understand, I don't think, before we brought her home, like that mom was having a baby or anything. Like we got him a baby doll to try and learn how to be gentle with the baby and stuff. But he really is really sweet to her. When we brought her home, we kind of let him approach her, had her in like her car seat, so one of us wasn't holding her, so he didn't feel some type of way. And eventually he noticed her, and he was so sweet. He wanted to show her how to go down the slides, and it was just a really sweet moment. And that's like the best thing in the world, to see them two together, because they're lifelong buddies at this point. Like, I go through holidays with my sister, and having a sister and sibling is literally like the best thing in the whole world. So I'm so happy that they have each other, and I just can't wait to see like their relationship blossom and then be best friends over the next few years. So that does it for this labor and delivery video. I hope it didn't scare you guys too much. What happened to me is definitely very, very uncommon. I'm just glad I didn't have her in the actual car, because it was my fear like the entire time I was pregnant, basically. Subscribe for new videos. I'm gonna have a ton of content coming your way. I'm so happy to be back on YouTube, and I'll see you guys here on my next video.